Hi everybody. Today I'd like to share with you an exercise that I do with my students in my classroom, and this exercise is all about perception. So perception is when we go beyond glancing and labeling and we get into really looking at the specifics of something, in this case our pine cone. So if you want to participate at home, what you might want to do is go out and collect about a dozen of something. Could be pine cones, could be pebbles, it could even be potatoes. Something where they all look pretty similar, and if you were to glance and label, you'd go, yep, that's a pine cone, all right. So I've collected this one, and then there's a few of his friends in there, about 10, 12. That's a good number to use. If you want to really challenge yourself, collect 20. And our goal here is to perceive this pine cone, to get really up close and personal, and try to notice the particulars of your pine cone or whatever else you've collected. So see if you can memorize some of those really specific details. You're going to look very closely at it. You might even want to think about the outline or the silhouette. Sometimes if we hold it up to a light source, there we go, and squint at it. You don't even have to in this video. Look at that wonderful window. You can see the silhouette there. You can see just the outline. And how really it's not so generic, is it? There are a lot of very specific, particular kinds of shapes happening here in this particular pine cone. So I'm going to keep observing. And if you're doing this at home, I'd invite you to set a timer for 1 minute and see if you can study your object for a whole minute before you do step 2. Okay, so step 2, you're going to put him back in there with all of his friends. Give it a good shake. Let's take a look. Here's what we have, folks. We have, oops, there we go. Here's what we have. We have quite a few pine cones here, and they're all quite similar. And our job at this point is to go through and try to find our particular pine cone, our specific pine cone that we saw at the beginning of the video. And in looking at these, I can take some of them out right away. Like this one is far too small. This one's just a little too perfect. I don't know. Nobody likes him. He's way too perfect. And there's our friend, our particular pine cone. Now, one of this pine cone's defining characteristics is this lovely, now some may call it an imperfection, but I think it's just lovely, this lovely little piece that's coming down right there. And of course, if we hold it up, we check our silhouette again. Oh, it's got a very particular silhouette, and that might have been the way that you recognized your object. And this is an exercise in perception. If we want to become very good at drawing things realistically, we have to become very good at perceiving, at looking at all of those wonderful little particular details in our world. Thank you. Hi, folks. For our next technique, we're going to try something called blind contour drawing. In this technique, the blind part is not that we aren't looking at our object. We're looking only at our object, and that means that we're not looking at our paper. To get set up for this one, I recommend that you use a marker or something that you can't erase. The goal in this one is not to make a perfect rendering, but rather to observe and to give yourself an opportunity to map out those specific, particular curves and contours that are going all around your object. You might recognize this little fellow. This is our pine cone from the first video. And there it is, that lovely imperfection here. We're going to try to capture that in our blind contour. When we do that, it might not show up quite where you'd expect, because remember, we're not looking at our paper. But in the end, you will come up with something that's really interesting and that certainly has increased your skills in perception and this time in recording what you see. So here's how I like to get set up. Many students like to tape their paper down so it doesn't wiggle around while you're working. So if you're working on a table, that's fine. This is just an old scrap of cardboard. You can certainly use that for a drawing board as well, if you happen to have one of these around. So when I'm doing a blind contour, I like to turn physically away from my paper so that I'm not tempted to glance at it, because when we see movement, it's just human nature that we're going to glance toward that movement. So what I like to do is I've got my paper right here, I've got my pen, and I'm going to physically turn away from my paper so that I only have eyes for you, pine cone. I'm only looking at the pine cone, not at all looking at my paper. Now go ahead and set a timer if you like. If you're a timer person, you're welcome to set a timer for anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes. It doesn't seem like a long time, but when you're drawing, it can go by pretty quickly. So let's give it a try. I'm going to be working while you're working, and I'll join you again in just a moment. For the purposes of this demonstration, you can see that I've switched to the whiteboard. I also made a drawing on paper, but it was a little bit hard to see what I was doing. So I have switched to the whiteboard, but I've also done a drawing on paper off camera that I have saved for the end.